Alright, next up on the chopping block is the TRX Duo SDR receiver and transmitter. This is a Red Battaglia clone. Actually, it's a clone of the Red Battaglia 12514 to be precise. It's just about under $300. You can get them $230 or so eBay or AliExpress. This is an HF SDR, so 50 kilohertz to about 50 megahertz or so is our receive transmit range. And we are going to use Pavel Demon's firmware to use this with Gnu Radio. For this one you have to set up an SD card. Go see the TechMinds video on this. He shows how to set up Pavel Demon's firmware on the SD card, and we'll hook it up to GNU Radio and see what the transmit spectrum looks like. Now, I should say for transmit of this guy, this device has no filter on the DAC output, which basically means you're going to see Nyquist zones. So if that's something you're interested in, this guy has no filter. Which means you're going to need one of these little guys. Right here is a low pass filter, DC to 30 megahertz. Highly recommend getting this if you're going to use this for HF transmit. Okay, back of the unit, you got the gigabit Ethernet port. That's what we setting up. With Pavel's firmware, it will default to an IP address of 192.168.1.100. Then the next guy is the 5 volts 2 amps plug. It's a USB-C plug. Your 5 volt supply needs to be able to do 2 amps, so make sure of that. And then there's the TF card slot. Again, see the TechMinds video on how to set that up for Pavel Demon's firmware. And once it boots up, like I said, it will default to an IP address of 192.168.1.100. Okay, front of the unit, to receive, to transmit. We'll just be looking at TX1 today on a spectrum analyzer and see what the output power looks like. But there's 4 standard SMA connectors here. Again, to receive, to transmit. Now we'll show how to get this going with GNU Radio. Alright, so to get started with the TRX Duo, once you install GNU Radio, you're going to need these Osmocom blocks, and unfortunately they're not part of GNU Radio. So you're going to have to, I'm running Linux, so you have to bring up a Linux terminal and type these commands here, highlighted in gray. It takes a little bit, but for me it works. Should recommend you should be using the latest version of GNU Radio before you type these commands. For those Windows users, I would just recommend installing Radio Conda. It's a GNU Radio package. Everything's already included. For Linux people that want the whole thing bundled, go ahead and get Dragon OS. That has everything already there. But for those of you that have your own custom Linux and you install GNU Radio by itself, like it or not, the Osmocom blocks are not included. So you need to type these following commands such that the Osmocom source and sync blocks will be available. Alright, once you've plugged in your TRX Duo, all you simply do is type the IP address. Like I said, it's 1.100. And to use GNU Radio, we simply want to click SDR Transceiver. Now the TRX or the Red Battaglia is ready to run with GNU Radio. Alright, we have GNU Radio opened up, so now we should be able to go in our search field and look for the Osmocom sync. There we go. Take one of them. And just to test it, we will Also drag in a signal source. Should say with the TRX Duo you want to pick the sample rates that Pavel says. They can't be arbitrary. So 50 kilohertz is one of the valid sample rates. So just a note there, the sample rate you pick has to be a function of what the firmware allows. So in this case 50 kilohertz is valid. Alright, so then we double click this guy, and we gotta tell this thing it's a red pitaya, so we say red pitaya equals the IP address. Okay, and we want to use transmit 1, so we specify it that way. If you want to use transmit 2, I think this would be 1002. Alright, and we will transmit at 3 megahertz. And that's all we do. Sample rate's 50. Alright, so 3 megahertz is our transmit freak, and we'll be giving a 1 kilohertz sine wave. Alright, let's run it. And it's running. Okay, so they have the output of TX1 to the spec in, and there's our 3 megahertz tone with a slight 1 kilohertz offset, and we are measuring a power level of minus 8.3. So I have noticed if I change the amplitude to 2, I get a slightly higher power, so let's show you that. Alright, so now if we go in here and we make the reference be 2, so now our signal will oscillate between 2 and negative 2. We should get a slightly higher power. Okay, so now with the amplitude going in to negative 2, we're outputting minus 2.4 dBm. So there's a slight difference between the TRX and the red pitaya, but for something that's half the price, we can accept that. So that's pretty much the max power output of this thing. So as you can see, it's very low, but good enough to test stuff or drive an amp, but that's the max power output of this device. Alright, that's it. Let's do one other thing. Alright, so let's kind of show what I was talking about. So let's change this 3 megahertz. Let's go up to 20 megahertz output. And let's look at the full output of this thing on the spec hand. Alright, so let's get this to 20 megahertz center, 20 megahertz, and there is our signal, minus 3. But let's show you why the, let's get this to about 10 megs, and the stop we will go up to about 2 gigs. So this is what I was talking about. The low pass filter is needed straight out of that DAC, and the TRX Duo is no low pass. So you have the 20 megahertz fundamental, and then you're seeing the clumps of Nyquist zones there. So that may be of interest to you, depending on what you want. But you can see that you got 2 tones there, pretty much centered at 125 megs. That's the clock. And then you see the 2 tones again. That's 2 times the clock. Then another set over here, 3 times the clock. I think you guys are getting it. Another set of tones over here, 4 times the clock. The power is clearly weaker, but they are there. So if you're just interested in using this for HF transmit, definitely want to get like a 30 megahertz low pass filter to suppress these Nyquist zones so that don't go into your amplifier. Okay, so now I put a 30 megahertz low pass, and you can see all those nyquist zones have been completely eliminated. So now you're at a nice signal that you can send to your amplifier. And if we center this back at 20 megahertz and we make our span, there you can see our 20 megahertz signal. Actually, we've got a 1 kilohertz offset, but so the TRX Duo, a HF SDR transmitter receiver. I would say anyone interested in this should only be really for TX transmit purposes. There's plenty of other better SDR receivers for HF. AirSpy HF Plus comes to mind, but for someone looking at some SDR transmit stuff in the HF area and don't want to spend a fortune, TRX Duo I think could be a good choice for you. It uses Gnu Radio. Obviously that's what I use to stream it IQ, so that we can stream it anything: waterfall, AM, sideband, ISB. You keep it generic and the power is in your hands. Moonshine Radio, folks. Thanks for watching.